I do want to tell you that this example right here, example 3, if you're not sure about this and you're not following what they're doing in the textbook, ask me about it, okay? This is a different kind of factoring. It's not in the list of the ones up there. It's not necessarily clear whether that's something they might ask you on the Ma10 exam or not. But there was this list up here. I'm going to put number 4. I'm going to put a little star next to it, asterisk next to it. It's factoring by grouping. Because it's none of the other 3, but sometimes you can factor a polynomial this way. This is called factoring by grouping. It says determine binomial factors. When you get to that, some of you asked about it last time. Basically what it is they give you an expression where that is what it has in common. It has x minus 4 in common. If I told you something that said 3xy minus 7y, what does this have in common? It has y in common. What you could do is, and you can think about this as, some people talk about factoring out the greatest common factor, as in they take this thing and they put it out in front of whatever's left, right? If I take that out, what do I have left? If I put a y in front of the brackets here, what do I have left inside the brackets? What do I need to multiply it by? What would I need to multiply the first term by to get this? If I have a y in front, okay, think about it this way. I'll pull this out. If I pull the greatest common factor out, okay, watch this. If I pull this out, what do I have left? Since it has it in common, you don't need to have it in each term. Instead, what you can do is you can put it in front, because then it gets multiplied by both terms. You want to see that again? Just because it was so amazing? Okay, watch this. This is slow motion. Ready? You factor out the greatest common factor. That's about as slow as I did it before, right? Except you only need one of them in front, right? And what's left? 3x minus 7, okay? If you start with 3xy minus 7y, you can rewrite it in what's called factored form. Factored form is two things multiplied. This is a single polynomial. This thing is a factored form of that same thing because it's instead of one, that's really good. Instead of one, try to highlight it and cross it out. Instead of one thing, it's two things multiplied. All right? This is more difficult because the thing that's a factor, you notice how I factored the y out of this thing? The thing that's a factor is x minus 4. If I took that out, that thing in blue, what would be left? If I put the thing in blue out in front, what's left over? What's left over there? What do I have left over here? 3x plus 5. Exactly, right? That's what that thing factors down to. If you haven't done this already, don't worry about it. You can put an asterisk next to it and know that it's a more difficult question, or it's a kind of a sideline concept that maybe we don't have to worry about so much. If you're given something like this and there's nothing in common, is there anything in common all the way across there? Do those terms have anything in common? Well, the first two have a y, and the second two, the last pair, what do they have? These have a greatest common factor of y, these have a greatest common factor of 2. But there's nothing that they all have in common. You can't divide them all by 2, you can't divide them all by y, there's no common factor. The only thing you're going to know in grade 10 to try, if there's no common factor, is called factoring by grouping. Grouping means it might work, if you take the greatest common factor out of the first pair. What can I factor out of the first pair again? What do they have in common? They have a y in common, right? What happens if I factor a y out of that? What do I get? Y plus 8x. What can I factor out of the second group? I can't factor a y. They don't both have a y, right? What do they both have if I broke them all down? They both have a 2. What's left if I divide them all by 2? If I factor out the 2, what's left? Y plus what? Hey, What's left over there in that last part? If you factor 2 out of this thing, what do you have left? You got a y plus 8x. Now, this one happens to work by grouping because the thing that you're left with is a common factor, a common binomial factor. It says determine binomial factors. That yellow thing is something it has in common. You could pull this out just like I did before with the y up above, right? If I pulled out that common factor, what would I have left? Let me try my lassoing skills again here. See if I can do better. Oh, I missed that one. This I can feel it. This is going to be good. There we go. Okay, got it. What if I factored that out? What's left? If I factor that out, what's left? Y plus 2. So I'm factoring out, like I'm not actually going to leave it like this because I want to be able to look at it. You're going to have the yellow thing out in front. And what did you say you're going to have left? Y plus 2. Y plus 8x, y plus 2. How could you check that you're right here? How could you check you're right? What could you do? Oh, well, actually, there's a way you could do it by using your calculator, but it would be too complex. Remember, what you're learning is you're learning how to undo the answer, right? You're taking a single polynomial or thing like this, and you're breaking it apart into 2 factors. Your answer should multiply out to give you what you started with, right? So if this is your answer, what happens if you multiply that out? What should you get? What should you get? If those 2 factors are your answer, what should you get? Just like if you factor the number 15 and you say it's 3 times 5, how could you check that 3 times 5 is right? Just multiply it out and see, right? You could multiply this out, which is something you got to do in grade 10 anyways. Multiply it out with your lines or with an area model or whatever, right? That should multiply to give you what you started with. That's factoring by grouping. It's going to work when there's 4 terms sometimes. And it's not a huge concept, but it's something that you might want to know. Okay? If you're aiming to just pass this unit, don't worry about factoring by grouping. If you're saying I'm going to be happy if I get 50% on this test for this unit, then don't worry about factoring by grouping. Learn the other 3. Okay? Learn the other 3. If you're aiming for a high mark, you should learn factoring by grouping. Okay?